Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1st, 1949, in the city of Rio Negro, Colombia. He was the third child in the family of farmer Jesus Dari Escobar and schoolteacher Hamilda Gaviria. As a teenager, Pablo spent a lot of time on the streets of Medellin, which was the capital of the Antioquia department. For a short period of time, he studied at the Autonomous University of Latin America in Medellin. Young Pablo spent a huge part of his time in the poor neighborhoods of Medellin, which was a real hotbed of crime. Escobar began stealing tombstones from a local cemetery and erasing the inscriptions, selling them to Panamanian resellers. He then sold cigarettes and marijuana and counterfeited lottery tickets. Soon he created a small gang and began stealing expensive cars for sale for spare parts. Then the idea came to him to engage in racketeering. Racketeering is systematic extortion, usually taking the form of organized crime with the use of threats, brutal violence, and hostage-taking. In 1971, Pablo's men kidnapped wealthy Colombian industrialist Diego Echevarria, who was killed after prolonged torture. The criminals tried to obtain a ransom, but failed, and after strangling their victim, threw the body into a landfill. Escobar openly declared his involvement in his murder. The poor people of Medellin celebrated the death of Diego Echevarria, and, as a sign of gratitude to Escobar, began to respectfully call him El Doctor. By robbing the rich, Pablo built cheap housing for the poor, and his popularity in Medellin grew day by day. A year later, 22-year-old Escobar was Medellin's most notorious crime lord. His gang continued to grow, and Pablo decided to start a new criminal business with which his entire subsequent life would be connected. In the 1970s, the United States was a country with an unlimited market for drug trafficking. Marijuana was to be replaced by a new drug, and it was cocaine, which, along with other alkaloids, is found in plants of the genus Erythroxylum. These plants were widespread in Colombia, and Escobar put drug production on stream. However, at first, Pablo's group was only an intermediary, buying goods from manufacturers and selling them to resellers who sold cocaine in the United States. In March 1976, Pablo Escobar married his 15-year-old girlfriend, Maria Victoria Henao Vallejo, who had previously been in his circle. A year later, their son Juan was born, and even later their daughter Manuela. Escobar's drug business grew rapidly throughout South America. He himself began smuggling cocaine into the United States. One of Escobar's close associates, a certain Carlos Leader, who was responsible for transporting cocaine, organized a drug trafficking transshipment point in the Bahamas. Its work was organized at the highest level: a large pier, a number of gas stations, and a modern hotel with all amenities were built there. Not a single drug trafficker could export cocaine outside of Colombia without the permission of Pablo Escobar. Escobar removed the so-called 35% tax from each shipment of drugs and ensured its delivery. In the jungles of Colombia, he opened chemical laboratories for the production of cocaine. In the summer of 1977, Escobar and 3 other major drug traffickers teamed up to create an organization that became known as the Medellin cartel. He had the most powerful financial and cocaine empire, which no other drug mafia in the world had. To deliver cocaine, the cartel had a distribution network, airplanes, and even submarines. Pablo Escobar became the undisputed authority of the cocaine world and the absolute leader of the Medellin cartel. He bribed police officers, judges, and politicians. If bribery did not work, then blackmail was used. By 1979, the Medellin cartel already owned more than 80% of the U.S. cocaine industry. 30-year-old Pablo Escobar became one of the richest people in the world. To enlist the support of the population, Escobar launched extensive construction in Medellin. He paved roads, built stadiums, and erected free houses for the poor, which were popularly called Pablo Escobar Quarters. He himself explained his charity by the fact that it hurt him to see how the poor suffered. In the underworld, Escobar reached the pinnacle of power. Later, he began to look for a way to make his business legal. In 1982, Pablo Escobar ran for office, and at age 32, became a substitute congressman for the Colombian Congress. Having infiltrated Congress, Escobar began to dream of becoming president of Colombia. At the same time, once in Bogotá, he noticed that his popularity did not extend beyond Medellin. In Bogotá, they heard about him as a dubious character paving a cocaine road to the presidency. One of the most popular politicians in Colombia, the main candidate for the presidency, Luis Carlos Galán, was the first to openly condemn the new congressman's connection with the cocaine business. A few days later, Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla launched a widespread campaign against the investment of dirty cocaine money in the election race. As a result, Pablo Escobar was expelled from the Colombian Congress in January 1984. Thanks to the efforts of the Minister of Justice, his political career ended once and for all. However, Escobar was not going to leave quietly and decided to take revenge on the minister. On April 30th, 1984, 2 gunmen on a motorcycle and several others in a car ambushed Lara Bonilla's limousine and shot him to death on a street in northern Bogotá. In the mid-1980s, Escobar's cocaine empire controlled almost every aspect of Colombian society. However, a serious threat looms over him. The administration of U.S. President Ronald Reagan declared its own war on drug trafficking, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. An agreement was reached between the United States and Colombia, according to which the Colombian government pledged to hand over to American justice the cocaine barons involved in trafficking drugs to the United States. The drug mafia responded with terror to the total war started by the government. Pablo Escobar created a terrorist group called Los Extraditables. Its participants attacked officials, police, and anyone who opposed drug trafficking. The reason for the terrorist attack could have been a major police operation or the extradition of another cocaine mafia boss to the United States. A year later, the Supreme Court overturned the agreement on the extradition of drug traffickers to the United States. However, just a few days later, the new president of Colombia, Virgilio Barco, vetoed the Supreme Court's decision and renewed the agreement. In February 1987, Escobar's closest assistant, Carlos Leder, was extradited to the United States. Pablo Escobar was forced to build secret hideouts throughout the country. Thanks to information from his people in the government, he managed to stay one step ahead of law enforcement agencies. In addition, the peasants always warned him when suspicious people, cars with policemen or soldiers, or a helicopter appeared. In 1989, Pablo Escobar again tried to make a deal with justice. He agreed to surrender to the police if the government would guarantee that he would not be extradited to the United States. The authorities refused. On August 16, 1989, Supreme Court Judge Carlos Valencia died at the hands of Escobar's hitmen. The next day, Police Colonel Waldemar Franklin Quintero was killed. On August 18, 1989, at a pre-election rally, the famous Colombian politician Luis Carlos Galán was shot, who promised, if elected president of the country, to start an irreconcilable war against cocaine traffickers, to cleanse Colombia of drug lords by extraditing them to the United States. Before the presidential elections in Colombia, killers in Bogotá alone carried out 7 explosions within 2 weeks, as a result of which 37 people were killed and about 400 were seriously injured. On November 27, 1989, Pablo Escobar's men planted a bomb on a Boeing 727 passenger plane of the Colombian airline Avianca, which was carrying 101 passengers and 6 crew members. 5 minutes after the airliner took off, a powerful explosion was heard on board. The plane broke in half, caught fire, and crashed into the nearby hills. None of the people on board survived, and 3 people on the ground were killed by falling aircraft debris. Massive raids swept across the country, during which chemical laboratories and coca plantations were destroyed. Dozens of drug cartel members are behind bars. In response to this, Pablo Escobar twice attempted to assassinate the head of the Colombian secret police, General Miguel Maza Marquez. In the second attempt on December 6, 1989, a bomb explosion killed 62 people and injured about 100 of varying degrees of severity. By the early 90s, Pablo Escobar topped the list of the most wanted drug traffickers in the United States. The Colombian government created a special search group whose target was Pablo Escobar himself. The group included the best police officers from selected units, as well as people from the army, special services, and the prosecutor's office. Thanks to the activities of the group, led by Colonel Martinez, several people from Pablo Escobar's inner circle were captured. Escobar's men kidnapped some of Colombia's richest people. Pablo Escobar hoped that influential relatives of the hostages would put pressure on the government to cancel the agreement on the extradition of the criminals. And in the end, Escobar's plan succeeded. The government canceled the extradition of Pablo Escobar. On June 19, 1991, after Pablo Escobar was no longer in danger of extradition to the United States, he surrendered to the authorities. Escobar agreed to plead guilty to several minor crimes. In return, he was forgiven for all of his past. Pablo Escobar was in a prison that he built for himself. The prison was called La Catedral and was built in the Envigado mountain range. La Catedral looked more like an expensive, prestigious club than an ordinary prison. There was a disco, a swimming pool, a jacuzzi, and a sauna, and in the courtyard there was a large football field. Friends and women came to see Escobar there. Escobar's family could visit him at any time. Colonel Martinez's special search group had no right to approach La Catedral closer than 3 kilometers. Escobar came and went as he pleased. He attended football matches and nightclubs in Medellin. During his imprisonment, Pablo Escobar continued to run a multi-billion-dollar cocaine business. One day he learned that his associates in the cocaine cartel, taking advantage of his absence, robbed him. He immediately ordered his men to take them to La Catedral. He personally subjected them to brutal torture, drilling his victims' knees and tearing out their nails, and then ordered his men to kill them and take the corpses outside the prison. It is known that Escobar committed one of the 2 murders with his own hands. On July 22, 1992, President Cesar Gaviria, having learned about Pablo Escobar's actions in prison, ordered his transfer to a real prison. But Escobar found out about the president's decision and fled. Now he was free, but he had enemies everywhere. There were fewer and fewer places left in which he could find a safe refuge. The US and Colombian governments this time were determined to put an end to Escobar and his Medellin cocaine cartel. After escaping from prison, everything began to fall apart for Escobar. His friends began to leave him. Escobar's main mistake was that he could not critically assess the current situation. He considered himself a more significant figure than he actually was. He continued to have enormous financial capabilities, but he no longer had real power. The only way for Escobar to somehow improve the situation was to try to renew the agreement with the government. Escobar tried several times to re-enter a deal with justice, but President Cesar Gaviria, as well as the US government, believed that this time it was not worth entering into any negotiations with the drug lord. It was decided to pursue him, and if possible, eliminate him during his arrest. On January 30th, 1993, Pablo Escobar's men planted a powerful bomb in a car near a bookstore on one of the crowded streets of Bogota. The explosion occurred when there were a lot of people there, mostly parents with their children. As a result of this terrorist attack, 21 people were killed and more than 70 were seriously injured. The Cali drug cartel, which competed with it, also fought against the Medellin cartel. In addition, the self-defense forces of Córdoba and Urabá, created by the Castaño Gil brothers, Fidel, Vicente, and Carlos, a far-right paramilitary force, in close cooperation with the US CIA, which has always supported anti-communist movements, created the organization Los Pepes. In addition to the militants, it included Colombian citizens whose relatives died because of Escobar. This organization received funding, among other things, from the Cali cartel. After the attack, members of Los Pepes detonated bombs in front of Pablo Escobar's house. The estate that belonged to his mother burned to the ground. Los Pepes began to terrorize and hunt those who were in any way connected with him or his cocaine business. In a relatively short time, the Los Pepes organization caused significant damage to Escobar's cocaine empire. Its members killed many of his people, persecuted his family, and burned his estates. Now Escobar was seriously worried about his family. If his family were outside of Colombia, he could have declared all-out war on the government and his enemies. Escobar wanted to take his family to Germany, but after negotiations between the Colombian government and US intelligence agencies with the German government, Escobar's family was denied entry into the country and the plane was returned back to Colombia. In Colombia, the government put them up in a hotel. In the fall of 1993, the Medellin cocaine cartel began to disintegrate, but the drug lord was more concerned about his family. Escobar has not seen his wife or children for more than a year. On December 1st, 1993, Pablo Escobar turned 44 years old. He knew that he was under constant surveillance, so he tried to speak on the phone as briefly as possible so that he would not be spotted by police and intelligence agents. The day after his birthday, December 2nd, 1993, Escobar called his family. The agents hunting him had been waiting for this call for many hours. This time, while talking to his son Juan, Escobar remained on the line for about 5 minutes. After this, Escobar was spotted in the Medellin quarter of Los Olivos. Soon, the house in which Pablo Escobar was hiding was surrounded on all sides by special agents. The special forces knocked down the door and burst inside. At that moment, Escobar's bodyguard El Limon opened fire from the window at the police who were trying to storm the house. El Limon was hit and fell to the ground. Immediately after this, with a pistol in his hands, Pablo Escobar himself leaned out of the same window. He opened fire, then climbed out the window and tried to escape from his pursuers through the roof. A Colombian police sniper, hiding on the roof of a nearby house, shot Escobar in the leg, and he fell. The next bullet hit Escobar in the back, after which, according to one version, the sniper approached Escobar and fired a control shot in the head. There are numerous testimonies and theories about who exactly fired the fatal shot that caused Pablo Escobar to fall dead on the roof of a house in Medellin. The autopsy report mentions 3 bullet wounds, the first in the shoulder, the second in the left leg, and the third, fatal, on the right side of the head. Juan Pablo Escobar is confident that the fatal shot was fired by none other than his father, since the drug king repeatedly told his son that if his enemies surrounded him, he would shoot himself with his favorite German Sig Sauer pistol in his right ear to avoid being captured alive. This is also proven by the fact that in the famous photo of Pablo Escobar's body on the roof next to him lies exactly this pistol, which he always had with him, while his other Glock 17 pistol was in a holster.